Have you ever wondered about your own blind spots? Or where you really stand when it comes to understanding people who are different from you? Well, today we're going to unpack a really powerful framework for thinking about equity. And we're not going to do it with some dry academic textbook. Nope. We're going to do it by looking at the life of one incredible person. So let's dive in. That quote, it's from Sharon Hurley Hall, an amazing author and anti-racism educator. And it really captures the exact moment her whole world just shifted. You know? It was that one moment that kicked off this lifelong journey for her. A journey that, believe it or not, led her to a brand new way of mapping our own experiences with bias and equity. So who is Sharon Hurley Hall? Well, she's a journalist, an educator, and she wrote the book I'm Tired of Racism. Plus, she founded the sheer anti-racism community. I mean, her entire life's work is dedicated to this stuff. But here's the thing. To really get her insights, you've got to understand her story first. Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of the framework itself, we've got to take a step back. We need to walk through the real-life experiences that show you why a tool like this is so important, so necessary. And this story, it all starts with one really jarring moment in her childhood. Just try to imagine this for a second. You're 6 years old, living in Trinidad. And for Sharon, this was it. This was the first time she became truly aware of difference. I mean, it was a complete, brutal shattering of her childhood innocence. It was the moment she realized that, for some people out there, the color of her skin was the only thing they saw. And believe me, that experience at age 6, that was just the beginning. In the 70s, she was literally sent home from school because of her afro. She learned about something called shadism, this awful bias that says lighter skin is somehow prettier. And then, when she was a young adult living in France, she ran into what she describes as even more egregious racism. And all of this, you can imagine, it really started to harden her perspective. So, after all that, what was the result? Well, she ended up with a pretty stark, but let's be honest, understandable perception. She's open about it. This bias became a kind of defense mechanism for her, a way to get by in a world that just felt hostile a lot of the time. Okay, but this is the crucial part of the story. This is the turning point. Even with this bias that was forged in all these painful experiences, she made a conscious choice, a really powerful one. She decided she was not going to let her own bias drive the bus, as she puts it. And that single decision, it became the foundation for everything. Her work, her life. It's what allowed her to build bridges, make close white friends, and, eventually marry a white Englishman. So Sharon's whole story, it kind of brings up this huge, fundamental question, right? And it's one that really applies to every single one of us. It makes you stop and ask, how in the world do we understand our own journey with all this stuff? With bias, with equity? How do you make sense of your own blind spots, your own progress? Those perceptions that are just so deeply ingrained in us. I mean, if we're all on some kind of journey here, how do we even know where we are or where we're supposed to be going? What we need is a map. Well, guess what? That map actually exists. It's called the 6 Stages Framework. And you can think of it like a GPS. Seriously. It's a tool that helps you pinpoint your own location on this really complex, winding road of understanding difference. And look, this isn't just some casual idea someone came up with. It's a really structured tool that was developed by Dr. Shungu Magadza. And at its heart, what it does is it uses a series of questions to help you and me and anyone map out our own personal diversity and equity journey. And it totally gets that this is a winding path, It's not some straight line to the finish. So here's how it's built. It's basically got 2 different paths, 2 different axes. On one side, you've got the negative axes. That's the path that goes from just being unaware of an issue all the way down to hostility and even extremism. But on the other side, you've got the positive axis. And that's all about growth. It starts with just being curious, then it moves into actively learning, and it leads all the way up to becoming a leader for inclusion. Okay, so a framework like that can sound a little abstract, right? But what does it actually look like when you apply it to a real person in a real life? Let's bring it all back to Sharon Hurley Hall and see exactly how she uses this tool to understand herself. This right here, this is what Dr. Magadza calls an inclusion profile. And this is so key. It shows that you can be at different stages for different issues, all at the same time. You might be super advanced in one area, but still just starting out, still learning in another. And that's totally normal. So for Sharon, her life's work obviously puts her at a really high stage when it comes to racism. But she's the first to say she's in those earlier active learning stages for other issues. So what does being at a +5 or a +6 actually look like in the real world? Well, for Sharon, it's her day job. It's running her anti-racism community, it's writing her newsletter, it's speaking on podcasts. It's this constant drive to find new information, to challenge inequity, and to really influence change. It's all about action. Now, when it comes to trans issues, Sharon places herself at around a +3 or 4, and this is that crucial active learning stage. Her attitude is simply, I'm still learning. And for her, that means intentionally following trans thought leaders on social media, reading what they write, and even checking in with her friends to make sure she's not saying or doing something that could cause harm. It's all about this humble, active process of educating herself. And her approach to disability issues, where she puts herself at about a 4 to 5, is actually a perfect roadmap for any of us. Step 1, just acknowledge you are not the expert. Step 2, learn from the people who have the actual direct lived experience. And then step 3, as you learn, you can start to share that knowledge. But, and this is so important, you always do it with the humility to point people back to the real experts. That's the key. Okay, so this brings us to probably the single most important lesson from this entire framework. This is not a video game, you know? You don't just level up to the final stage and then you're done. The work is never done. The journey is the whole point. And this quote right here, it gets right to the heart of her whole philosophy. For Sharon, it all comes down to integrity. It's simple. You can't be anti-racist if you are oppressing other people in some other way. You just can't. You can't fight for justice over here while ignoring injustice over there. And that belief, that core integrity, is what pushes her to constantly learn about things that are totally outside her own experience. It's about fighting all oppression, period. So when you boil it all down, the 6 stages framework isn't some ladder you just climb once and forget about. It's a map for a journey that's always moving, always continuing. You can shift between stages, you can move forwards and backwards. The goal isn't to reach some final destination. The goal is just to commit to the journey itself, to keep learning and to always try to act with integrity. And we want to leave you with one last really powerful idea from Sharon. She makes this argument that the original lie, the one created to justify the enslavement of Black people, is like the foundational scaffolding for so many other forms of oppression we see today. And so she poses this question, a question I think is worth us all considering. What if? What if dismantling anti-Blackness is the key? What if we could remove that core pillar? Could the whole rotten structure finally come crashing down?